I'm Dr. Ozzy. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a scientist, I'm a podcaster. Now, of course, I'm a YouTuber, right? I'm your personal guide through the US green card process. I came to the US in 2010. I always say this, as a broke grad student. I was chasing a dream. I really wanted to get my PhD. Now, eventually, I earned my PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics. I did major research in infectious diseases and secured lots of funding, private grants, NIH, right? All thanks to some serious grant writing hustle, right? In 2019, of course, I became a US permanent resident through EB-1A process. I didn't use any lawyers or any sponsors. And of course, this year, 2025, I became a US citizen. Now I help individuals just like you. My team and I, we work with professionals in every field. We help you build a real case, not just fill out forms. So if you're serious about your immigration goals, you're in the right place. Let's get started. So here's the thing that people miss about the EB1 green card. Even before USCIS looks at your awards, your publications, your salary, or your leadership roles, they're asking themselves three major questions, guys. They're really looking at the big picture. One of the things that they're asking themselves is this person truly extraordinary? That's the first one. The second is, are they still doing the work? Right? And of course, the third is, how is this work going to benefit the US? So you think about that. Is this person extraordinary? Are they still doing the work? And is this work actually going to benefit the US? You could meet 3 or even 6 out of the regulatory criteria and still get denied. I mean, I've seen people who have really good profiles get denied, right? If you can't answer these 3 questions I just talked about, these are the threshold questions, then if you can't answer them convincingly, then we might have a problem. So in this episode, we're going to break down exactly what these threshold requirements are, how to prove them, and of course, how not to get tripped up before you even get started. That's the purpose of this episode. So if you're still interested in this type of content, please stick around. Let's go. So, according to US immigration law, specifically the one specific to EB1A, you need to meet 3 fundamental requirements before USCIS even evaluates your evidence, right? And these are the requirements that you have to meet. The very first one is extraordinary ability, and you prove that through sustained national or international acclaim. That's the first one. The second one is your intent to continue working in the area of expertise. And the third is you have to show that your work will substantially benefit the United States. These aren't optional, they're mandatory. You have to show these 3 things. And they apply to every single EB1 case, whether you're an academic, whether you're an artist, an entrepreneur, or even an Olympic coach. You have to meet these 3 fundamental criteria, right? Okay, so let's start with the first one, extraordinary ability. What does this mean? What does it mean to be extraordinary, especially when it comes to the US immigration law and of course USCIS requirements? Well, USCIS, they define this extraordinary ability as a level of expertise that puts you among the top small percentage who have risen to the very top of your field. So you think about that again. You show expertise that puts you among the small percentage of individuals who have reached the top of your field. And it can be temporary. So it's not one of those things where you had a one-off and that's it, right? No, it has to be sustained over time, guys. So when you're thinking about if you're qualified for EB1A, think about the fact that you're not just showing it's a one-time thing and it's done. No, you have to show your career, you've been consistent in this thing that you've been doing, right? So no, you can't point to one big award from 8 years ago and then call it a day. No, guys, you have to show a pattern of recognition, multiple touch points across your career to show that you're really serious about what you do and that you're making the desired impact in your field. I'm going to give you a couple of examples so you see the kind of things that we're talking about. I always start with researchers because I'm a researcher, right? So my very first example is of a researcher. So let's say you're a neuroscientist, right? Why not? Let's use that. Let's say you're a neuroscientist, maybe your PhD dissertation was recognized nationally, and then you went on to publish in high top tier journals like Nature, right? Maybe you received NIH funding, maybe you gave a keynote talk in Europe. Each of these milestones builds the case, and together they show sustained acclaim, right? So that's a classic example. I always love to give neuroscientist examples. The second example is of a visual artist, right? Let's say you have been you've had a solo exhibit at a well-known museum 5 years ago. And then your work was featured in Art Forum, for example. You were invited to Art Basel, and maybe you acquired a national gallery. These things are career moments that show your sustained, not just occasional, but sustained recognition. And that could put you in the league of individuals who get their green cards through the EB1A route, right? Your work is to connect the dots between these achievements, right? That's your job. You have to prove that you didn't just show up and shine one time. You have to show that you stayed relevant, right? You were respected in your field. And of course, you're influential in your field. Those are the kind of things that help you stand out for this specific type of US green card category, right? Remember, guys, it's not just for everyone. It's merit-based, right? So let's talk about the second threshold. The very first one we talked about what it means to be extraordinary, right? The second threshold is, are you planning to continue working in your field? Big question, guys. Of course, the answer should be yes, right? Are you planning to continue working in your field? And of course, you have to show evidence that you intend to continue working in your field. Now, it seems obvious. A lot of people say, hey, why are they even asking that? If I'm applying for this type of green card, of course, I'm planning to continue in my field. But guess what? A lot of people get tripped up here. You can't build a case as a world-class scientist and then say you want to move into business consulting or even politics, right? You can't be a decorated athlete and then apply as a restaurant owner, right? So you have to show evidence that you're going to continue in this specific line of field with which you're applying for your green card. USCIS needs to see a clear link between your past accomplishments and your future plans. So you have to show evidence that you are actually going to continue in this field. So let me give you an example. I'll give an example of a professor at this time. I'll give an example of a professor. And in this example, if let's say you taught economics, right, at a top university, and you've published research in something like financial policy, your EB1A petition should show that you keep working in the field of economics. Now, whether it is in academia, whether it's in government, or even in think tanks, you have to show that you're going to stay in that field, right? Very important. I'll give another example. I love to give examples. I'll give an example of a startup CEO. Let's say you had this brilliant idea and you created something amazing, right? With which you're going to, of course, which the product will benefit the US. You have to show that you're going to continue in that field, right? So if your acclaim comes from, let's say you led AI ventures, and then your future plan cannot be to switch to real estate. This is funny because all of us want to end up in real estate, right? It's our hope, it's our dream, right? But no. Instead, you have to show that you plan to launch, advise, or even scale emerging technology in the US, right? Your plan, your private plans, or what do they call that? Residual income, of course, the money that you make while you're sleeping. Of course, we all want to make that kind of money, right? But for this specific type of green card, focus on your career, your expertise, the thing with which you're known for. Focus on that, right? So the bottom line is your past, your present, and your future must all point in the same direction, right? So if you guys have questions at this point, go ahead and type in the description portion of this video, in the comment section of this video, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions. But I hope that you see where we're going with all of this, right? You must have extraordinary ability. You must show evidence that you're going to continue in this field of your expertise. Of course, the third threshold will be that your work substantially benefit the United States. You have to show that your work will substantially benefit the United States. When I keep saying you have to show, what I really mean is you have to show evidence that your work will benefit the US. You have to show evidence that you plan to continue in that field. And of course, you have to show evidence that you are extraordinary in your field. Now, when we talk about the fact that your work will benefit the US, this part isn't about what you hope to do. Now, a lot of people make a mistake here. This part is actually about what you're likely to contribute economically, culturally, scientifically, or socially. So it's not just about all your hopes and dreams. It's about specifically what is that thing that you're going to contribute. Be very specific about it and talk about it with evidence, right? It doesn't need to be patriotic or flashy. So sometimes I talk to people and they talk about these lofty ideas and things that they haven't even done, right? And I say to them, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing ever, but it has to be relevant. It has to make sense, right? If you were to explain it to someone who was not in your field, they must see the relevance of that, the benefit of that, to the common man in America. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Guys, I'm giving you tons of examples so you for better ease of understanding. So you make so that when we're done with this series, you know you can preach the gospel to someone else. You know exactly what it is we're talking about with EB1A. Okay, so let me give an example of how you can show that your work will benefit the US. Say you're a data scientist, right? Let's say you develop machine learning models that improve early cancer detection, for example, right? That clearly benefits the US by improving public health, saving lives, and reducing costs, right? You're improving public health because people die of cancer, right? And so if you're putting things in place that will help prevent this, that's the public health benefit. You're of course saving lives, and of course you're reducing the cost of the disease. The cost of cancer treatment is enormous, right? And so anything that helps alleviate this burden is in the national interest of the US. I'll give a second example. I like to give different examples in different fields, right? The second example is that of a performing artist. Someone who is a classically trained dancer, for example, who has performed with international companies and is now choreographing for US-based ballet institutions. You may ask, what is the national interest of this? What's the benefit of this? Well, this kind of work contributes to the cultural enrichment of the country, right? USCIS recognizes this type of work. The examples that I'm giving you are specific examples to show you that you can qualify for EB1A from different fields, not just science. I give you examples in science, I give you in business, I give you in the arts, just so you can know that it's open to different fields, different categories, okay? So how do you show the benefit of your work? Let me give you a few examples. Things that you can do to show that your work is actually beneficial. The first is that you can show how your work aligns with national goals. STEM, education, innovation, art. These are some of the areas that you can touch on to show how your work aligns with national goals. Something that we like to do in our petitions, we like to link them to executive orders, government agencies that are in line with your expertise. The second thing you can do is you can highlight your awards, your grants or programs from US institutions that align with your expertise. The third, of course, is that you can mention your membership, your education, and your contributions to underserved communities. These are some ways that you can show that your work benefits the US. Remember, this part is about prospective impact. It's not just about past accomplishments. You have to talk about what will be the benefit of your work in the future and how will it benefit the US, right? So these three requirements are the gatekeepers of your EB1 success. Don't skip it, guys. Don't skip these three things we talked about. Extraordinary ability, your ability to continue in that field in the US, and of course, the benefit of your expertise to the US. You always have to talk about these three things in your EB1 petition. Now, you can meet every single regulatory criterion and still get denied. Now, if USCIS isn't convinced that you're still doing the work still matters, and that it will meaningfully contribute to the US, you can meet all the other criteria, but if you're not convinced that your work is still going on and that it still matters and that it's going to benefit the US, you could still get denied. So don't skip this part, guys. Don't bury it all at the end of your petition. Build into your narrative from the start, right? Build everything we're saying into the narrative from the start. Make sure that when you're talking about how your work will benefit the US, you're putting in evidence in there, you're putting in government initiatives that align with your work. These are some of the things that will make your work stand out. Now, guys, let's talk about some common mistakes. We always like to talk about common misconceptions, things that could happen that could make your application go the wrong way, all right? And also some of the common mistakes that others have made. The reason why I like to talk about common mistakes is that you can learn from people's mistakes. You don't have to make the mistakes yourself, right? So let's talk about a few common mistakes. The first one is submitting outdated achievements with no recent activity. This is very common for people who have tried different fields. Let's say you want agriculture and then you switch to finance and then you entered real estate, right? USCIS may think that your acclaim has faded. So you want to make sure that you are not submitting outdated achievements and you're no longer in that field. The second mistake is switching fields mid-petition. So a lot of my applicants are overachievers. They've done so many things. Talk about this, we talk about this, we talk about this, we talk about this. No, don't win awards in one field and apply in another field. Your awards are all in geology, but now you're making a lot of money in real estate, so you want to use real estate. No, please don't switch fields mid-petition. The third thing is submitting vague future plans. What do you hope to do with this stuff in the US? I hope to contribute to the society. That's not a plan, guys. Be more specific. How will you contribute to society? Those are some of the things that you need to think about, right? So now, if you're still with me, congratulations. I know it's a lot of information, but hey, hang in there. You're now on your way to understanding what it really takes to qualify for EB1A. And these will help you when you put your petition together. Now, guys, if you're kind of person who is super busy, you don't want to put this stuff together yourself, hey, we can do it for you. Now, what's the very next step? Proving that you can, you qualify for EB1A, right? How do you prove that you qualify for EB1A? You have to satisfy 3 out of 10 criteria. Now, this is where a lot of people start getting tripped up because they want to satisfy all of the things. No, this is where things get technical and strategic. And that's exactly what we're covering in the next episode, right? The next episode, I'm going to tell you specifically, this is what they need, and this is what you need to give them as evidence. We want to be very explicit about this stuff. So I want you to hit the subscribe button right now. I don't want you to miss out on anything that we're going to be talking about next, because it's going to be so useful in putting together your petition for EB1A and hopefully getting your green card as soon as possible, guys. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you on the next episode. If you've got questions about whether your work shows sustained acclaim or will benefit the US, guys, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll respond to as many questions as I can. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll respond to as many questions as I can. Have a good one. Bye-bye.